When it comes to high-end audio, how much should one be expected to invest, be it either time or money, in order to finally be able to just sit down with your favorite beverage, let out that sigh of relief because finally, there it is, that sound you've been chasing all along? That's a question I ask myself a lot when reviewing today's product. So let's find out together as we take a look at the brand new Synchrony T600 from PSB. The Synchrony T600 is PSB's flagship 5-way tower loudspeaker. It features a 1-inch titanium dome tweeter, a 5¼ mid-range driver, and three 6.5-inch woofers, all of the woofers being made from carbon fiber. Now, the 5 drivers plus 3 rear-firing ports combine to give this massive speaker a reported frequency response of 24 Hz to 23 kHz with an in-room sensitivity of 91 dB into 4 ohms. Visually, the T600 isn't necessarily going to strike you as a state-of-the-art loudspeaker. Don't get me wrong, the build quality and construction of the T600 is top-notch. Arguably some of the best in hi-fi right now. But on its face, the T600 is a basic rectangular-shaped tower loudspeaker, finished in either your choice of high-gloss piano black or piano black with satin walnut side panels. The MDF cabinet is basically dead inside. In addition to all the bracing that exists, each woofer gets its own internal chamber. Now, the speaker itself tips the scales at 77 pounds, but I'm convinced that once you add its thick aluminum bottom plate and those isoacoustic Gaia 2 feet, the T600 gains a few pounds. Needless to say, this is one of the beefier speakers that we've had in-house, and that girth has an effect on the speaker's overall sound. At nearly $8,000 a pair, one has a reasonable expectation for perfection. PSB isn't exactly shying away from that type of language either, as they tout the T600 as a reference caliber loudspeaker at virtually every turn. After having lived with the PSB now for several months, I have to say, I have only recently started to agree with them. PSB, like all speaker manufacturers, claims the T600 is capable of superlative performance top to bottom. While the Synchrony is most definitely capable of getting there, do not think for 1 second this level of performance is automatic. Because this speaker has 3 woofers and 3 rear-firing ports, as you might imagine, wrangling its bass is priority 1. Placing the T600 down in a spot where most loudspeakers sound best in our room and just hitting play resulted in bass that was way overpowering, sluggish, and frankly, not all that impressive. Sure, it was deep, subwoofer-like even, but it was murky and vague and didn't inspire a lot of confidence from either KRISTI nor myself. But I get the feeling the designers at PSB understand that the T600 bass is bound to be a little tricky in some rooms because it comes with 4 very nice port plugs that work wonders in helping tune the speaker for better performance. Be prepared to experiment quite a bit. Getting the bass just right proved to be a balancing act between careful placement and plugging the correct rear-facing ports for best results. But once dialed in, the T600's bass is very well dampened, deep, with great weight and solid reflexes. Large orchestral works like Hans Zimmer's Roll Tide, which we just talked about in our recent demo music video, came to absolute life through the PSBs with all of the scale, texture, and grandeur down low that I could ask for. No subwoofer required. The T600 bass also had the speed and immediacy both KRISTI and I like to hear from tracks like Dua Lipa's Pretty Please. Obviously, getting the bass right will have a profound effect on the T600's mid-range. If you do not have the PSB set up for proper bass response, you should expect a mid-range that is bottom-heavy and not very articulate. The T600 mid-range is likely never going to be classified as lean or clinical. At its best, and with some amplifiers, it basically gets to neutral. Over the course of our time with the PSB, I would classify it as a little bit warm and laid back, but when it comes to listening to mellower music, this is actually a trait that I preferred. I'm not suggesting that the speaker isn't articulate or that it's vague with respect to details, but it isn't exactly going to bowl you over with its detail retrieval the way other more forward speakers might. The T600 is a smooth operator, and when set up correctly, the transition from low bass on up through the mid-range is positively seamless. I love the T600 with vocals. All of my favorite artists sounded as I would imagine them to sound if I were sitting in the studio alongside them. Note, I didn't say they sounded live. The PSB, especially with respect to its mid-range performance, is not going to trick you into thinking you're listening to a live acoustic set. That's what high-efficiency speakers like KLIPSCH La Scalas are for. No, the T600 excels at recreating the recorded event. Moving on to the treble. Now here's one area where I really felt the T600 and I were always in total alignment. The titanium tweeter, well, nothing to write home about with respect to materials, does the trick and provides enough top-end energy for the T600 to have a livelier side without seeming disjointed from the rest of its signature sound. The tweeter is very extended and airy, but it doesn't call too much attention to itself. Like the mid-range, it's a bit laid back, and this can be influenced, good and bad, through your use of amplification, something I am confident KRISTI and I are going to talk about more in our bonus conversation. But on the whole, I think you can expect the T600 to have a detailed and delicate top end that, just compared to a lot of modern speakers, may seem polite at first, but in reality, it's just more on the neutral side. Seriously, the high frequency performance of this speaker is one of my favorite attributes, as this tweeter mates very well with a wide range of music genres. Which brings us to the soundstage and dynamics. Positioning is not only critical for the T600's bass response and high frequency performance, but also for its soundstage reproduction. Now here's where I feel the T600 is at odds with itself. Positioned out from your wall and aimed straight forward, the T600 casts a vast soundstage, one that is equal in its depth and width. However, in this position, the soundstage isn't crazy detailed. Spacious, yes, but the separation and definition between instruments and performers does start to blur slightly. Towing the speakers in a bit or a lot not only shores up the soundstage focus, it helps flesh out the speaker's top end. Tow-in also improves center imaging as it goes from being more orb-like to laser-etched as you aim the speakers more toward your listening position. The drawback with this is you're going to lose some soundstage width, so like with the bass, the T600s are a balancing act. And dynamics are pretty much the same. We paired the T600 with a wide range of amplifiers, and while it ultimately proved far easier of a speaker to drive in the end, you wouldn't know it given how many amps we toyed with in order to bring the speaker to life dynamically. Initially, I would have told you that you needed power when it comes to the T600. These speakers only really started to come to life when driven by either my Crown amp or the XTZ A2 400s in mono. The Unity Atom NAD M33, Cambridge AXR 100, and the Yamaha S801 all sounded positively gutless when paired with the PSB. The Musical Fidelity M5SI was better, definitely a step in the right direction, as was the Canor AI 110, but neither were 100% ideal. It was ultimately the Audiolab A6000 that saved the day, and in many ways, this speaker. And once connected to the Audiolab, the PSB sprung to life. But more importantly, it just became so much more interesting at all volumes rather than just at full tilt. Through the Audiolab, I gained a newfound respect for the T600's subtlety throughout its frequency range. The Audiolab also managed to find another gear with respect to the T600's bass, firming it up even more and giving it that kick in the ass I felt it needed. The PSB isn't an outright explosive speaker, but it builds in an organic way and has the ability to start and stop with relative ease, once you get your amplifier pairing just right, of course. In terms of drawbacks, I honestly don't have many. The T600 is one of the better built tower loudspeakers that I've encountered. Now, I'm not the world's biggest fan of gloss piano black finishes, and I found the T600 is one of the glossiest. Those of you with kids or pets, you be prepared to wipe these down regularly. The magnetic grills, they're not my favorite. Looks-wise, I think they're fine, but they're also really flimsy. And at this price point, I just expect a more confident, snap when approaching the front baffle of the speaker. But alas, the grills just sort of hang on enough. Apart from that, my only real gripe about this speaker is the same gripe that I have about a lot of high-end speakers lately. For the money these speakers command, they don't really make getting to the promised land easy. In the end, the PSB T600 proved to be cheaper to get right than, say, the Bowers & Wilkins 702 Signature, which needed a $6,000 amp versus the $1,600 one we used with the PSB. It seems logical to expect that the more money you spend on a speaker, the easier it should be to get performance out of it, and yet, this really isn't always the case. Speaking of B&W, I know, the T600s are easier to deal with, drive, and are better suited for more genres of music compared to, say, the 702 Signatures. The T600 does cost a little bit more, but I think you're getting more for your money with the PSB, just maybe not in the style category. The PSB is a more full-range speaker, more neutral in its tone with far more composed top end. But the B&W speaker the PSB really deserves to be compared to is the new 800 series Diamonds, specifically the 803D4 and maybe even the 802D4. The 803 retails for 20 grand a pair, and if you go by its reported specifications, they don't appear that different from the reported specs of the PSB. Through this lens, the T600 is a bona fide bargain in the high-end space. Now, I haven't heard the 803D4s, but I have spent time with the signatures, as well as previous generation 800 series, and I have to say, I think the T600 deserves to be mentioned alongside the 800 series anything, and I think it's outright better than the 702 signature. Compared to one of my favorite high-end go-tos, the Focal Utopia Evos, the T600s are definitely more full range and weightier in the mid-range, but they can't touch the Focals in terms of dispersion, extension, detail, and transparency. But like the new B&W Diamonds, the Focal speakers are more than double the cost and still require a sub and proper amplification in order to hear them at their best. Two things that add to the overall cost of your system before it necessarily addresses your overall enjoyment. Now you guys are probably going to ask, but I don't think it's really worth it to compare the T600 to the KLIPSCH FORTE 4s, a high-efficiency horn-loaded speaker that has a completely different vibe compared to the T600. I think you're either going to be in that horn camp or you're not, because I can't really see a person going to a shop to demo a speaker like the T600 and then suddenly doing an about-face and walking out with a KLIPSCH anything. The FORTE is lively, and it's all about bridging that gap between a recording and that you are there sort of experience, whereas the PSB is about giving you a more traditional audiophile one. And as for how the PSBs compare to that other Canadian speaker brand, Paradigm, specifically their new Founder Series, I have no idea. I haven't heard the Founder Series yet, so I cannot comment on how the T600 stacks up. And for those of you who ask us daily about the Founders, yes, we have requested them. No, they still have not responded, so your guess is as good as mine. And for those of you without $8 grand to spend on a pair of speakers, I haven't forgot about you. Less expensive but still comparable speakers would be the Focal CHORA 826s, Q Acoustic Concept 500, KLIPSCH 8000F, Heco Aurora 700, and even the Polk Audio Reserve Series towers. I would also include the Dynaudio Evoke series as well, but my full review of those speakers is just kind of right around the corner, so let's just leave it at that. So let's wrap it up. The PSB Synchrony T600 towers are, in my opinion, the epitome of value for the money, so long as you're talking about the ultra high-end space. Obviously, you can achieve similar levels of performance for way less. But when you start to compare the PSB to high-end speakers like the Bowers & Wilkins 800 series, Paradigm Founder, Focal, on and on, getting a pair of T600s is akin to stealing. So while finding a way to get the most out of the PSBs was a bit of a pain, once I found a setup that worked for me, it didn't take much to fall in love. Just know that ease of use isn't really on the menu. So like with a lot of high-end audio, the T600s once again make you work for it. So that's it. That is now my review of the PSB Synchrony T600 tower speaker, but now it's time to find out what KRISTI thought of them.
Well, for those of you who follow Andrew on Instagram, you might have been tipped off a little bit about my feelings on this speaker. Mm-hmm. Up until, I guess, last week, I'm not going to lie, I did not like the T600s.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm not even going to get into the fact that, once again, we've got a shiny black box that's going to cost you $8,000. Beyond that, they just sounded dull, slow, and boring.
They're not a forward speaker.
They're not, but I don't expect that I know that every speaker isn't going to be forward. And I think a lot of people are starting to, maybe you're starting to get frustrated with me because, well, I'm sure you think, well, if it's not forward, KRISTI's not going to like it. While you're not wrong, that doesn't mean I can't find ways to appreciate a speaker for what it does provide.
Sure.
But we put so many different amplifiers on this thing to get it to kind of coax something special out of it.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But the audio gods must have been looking down on the PSB because guess what? An amp showed up and one that, no lie, I have been waiting on for months and saved these speakers glossy little lives, at least for me. Mm-hmm. So a lot like the B&W 702 signatures, these really do take a very specific amplifier to perform at their best.
Yeah, I would say, and thankfully, unlike the B&Ws, it didn't take Herculean power, because I think the Audio Lab's only like 50 watts. It's just a very good 50 watts.
I'm not trying to say that you can't get something great out of the T600. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I did really start to enjoy this speaker. It just almost didn't happen. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So I guess my bigger concern when it comes to high-end audio, kind of going back to what I said a minute ago about, well, maybe the audiophile or the traditional audiophile's whole goal is to spend as much time as they possibly can, or at least they don't mind how much time they may need to invest in order to get their system to sound just right, on top of spending a lot of money to do it. I wonder if we set that group of people aside and we're looking at maybe, and I don't pretend to know like what percentage of buyers this would include, but I'm talking about the guy or girl who has been saving all their pennies and they have been maybe lusting after that pair of speakers that cost
whatever they cost.
Yeah. What are their expectations when they finally get those things home after they've saved however many years to get them, you know? And then when they get them home, plug them in, and what happens if, like what we experienced with the PSBs and also like the Bowers and Wilkins,
a lot of speakers,
you know, what happens when they don't immediately impress them? You know, I've heard a lot of people that have like old speakers, like, it's nothing compared to my Serwin Vega or whatever, you know, cause they've gone out and they finally bought something new after 20 years, and it doesn't compare. I feel like high-end audio could maybe do a little bit better job at helping those people out. I personally worry for those people because I know that they probably don't have at their disposal 7 different amplifiers to put on something to finally get there, to finally breathe that sigh of relief that you talked about at the beginning. And I feel like high-end audio could do a better job at shortening the amount of time and maybe even the amount of money that it takes to finally be happy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the opportunity for disappointment is potentially a lot higher in high end. I think that the reward is also potentially higher, but I think the opportunity for disappointment is even greater. And I agree with you. I really kind of wish that manufacturers, for as much as manufacturers like to talk about how everyone's kind of in it together, like high-end speakers promote high-end this, or even entry-level speakers promote the sale of a receiver or promote the sale of an integrated amplifier. I really wish that companies, especially nowadays with consolidation being what it is, I mean, PSB, Lenbrook, NAD, Blue Sound, they're all the same. And they're all under the same parent company. And yet you can get a pair of, T600s and they don't tell you at all, like, what works well with this in their experience to even just shorten the field. So you're kind of relying on people like us, and then you watch a review like this and it's like, we threw the kitchen sink and everything at it. Now, happily, I'm grateful that we found something that if you want to go out and buy these speakers, I would start with the Audio Lab. It's really quite solid. But I agree with you. I think that I think a lot of people, they spend a lot of money and have a certain expectation, and more it is becoming very apparent that your additional investment doesn't end at your wallet. or doesn't end at once you've made your decision and you get something home. There does appear to be even more of a learning curve at every turn. And that's super frustrating, I think. I mean, it's super frustrating for me, and I've been around it forever.
I think when you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, at least to me, I kind of expect there to be a little bit more convenience involved. Like, I guess maybe I want the shortcut, you know, like
the cheat code.
Give me the cheat code to win the game. I mean, because hey, I did just spend $8,000. And I think for me, when it comes to at least the T600s, that was what was missing for me. It took so long to get there, and had the Audio 6000, Audiolab 6000 not shown up, this would be a drastically different review.
From you. Oh, probably from me too, to be honest with you. Yeah. So that's it. That is now our review of the PSB Synchrony T600 Tower Loudspeaker. Now it's time for you guys to tell us what you thought of it. And while you're down in the comments, I have a question of the day for you. And that is, when it comes to high-end audio, how much should one be expected to invest, be it either time or money? And do you make the same allowances, or do you have the same expectation for more budget-friendly gear? So as you spend more, do you expect it to be easier, or do you like the struggle or the tinkering for hours at a time? I, for one, know that if I'm spending more money, I kind of want things to be easier, but I really do want to know what you guys think. So let us know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. It really does help the channel, and it's absolutely free. So if you wouldn't mind, if you like this video, thumbs up. If you use any of the links KRISTI left for you down in the comments below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here, and we both thank you very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and as of this review, there are still a few more days left to contribute to hurricane and wildfire relief. You can click donate somewhere on your screen, give what you can today, and we very much appreciate each and every one of you who have helped thus far. And that's it. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.